Hello and welcome everybody to Today in Space. We're here for an episode, a segment of People of Science where we dive into all the different, diverse spectrum of people that are involved in science. And we have one of those people here with us today. We have Georgia with us. Georgia, thank you for being on the show. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So, let's tell the folks how we met and how we got acquainted. So we both got accepted to the NASA social event, the CRS-19 launch for SpaceX. What first of all, what did you think about that launch? That was my first launch. I don't know about you.
It was not my first launch, but it was my first SpaceX launch.
Okay,
So,
what was your
yeah.
first launch?
My first launch was actually a NASA launch. It was one of the last launches of the shuttle era. So,
Oh, that's pretty cool. I'm a little jealous.
yeah.
Well, cool. So when what brought you to applying to that NASA shuttle? So I'm interested. What kind of what events brought you there? Why'd you sign up for it? Was it just another opportunity to see a launch, or?
Yeah, so as an intern, that's my background, obviously. I've been a NASA intern twice, and all things hopefully going according to plan. I've been accepted for a third internship this summer.
That's
But
awesome.
so thank you. They reached out to all the interns that were there, and they were like, "Hey, if you happen to also be a creative-minded person with a social media, you should try this thing." And I was like, "Well, I don't know if they want a cosplayer to be on a NASA social," but then they had the emphasis where they wanted people from all different backgrounds.
crazy.
So I was like, "I'll give it a go."
That's
Lo and
pretty
behold.
cool. Yeah, I'm amazed. You know, the NASA Social Program. I've been involved in it, or at least been applying to it for years now. It's almost as long as this podcast has been around. And it's changed a lot. I went. My first one was to the New Horizons mission for Pluto. That was down in APL in Maryland. And it's changed a lot since then. So it's cool to see that they're even using it internally. You know, just trying to spread the word, however they can, getting people interested in to spread the word. That's
Mhm.
awesome. So you talked about we're here to talk about your internship at NASA, and then of course your passion crossover of cosplay. So I want to go back a little bit, and I want to talk about, because one of the things I want to do with this segment and expose for people is, like, what was your earliest memory of science? Like, when did it click? When did you know that this is something you wanted to do?
Mhm. Well, I had always been a sciencey kid. I probably drove my mother up a wall because I would bring glass jars full of bugs into the house. And I'd do little science experiments by mixing like baking powder with soap. Like it wouldn't even produce a reaction, it just looked cool.
Hmm.
So I had always been a sciencey kid, and I had liked science the most out of anything else taught in school. But I didn't really have a direction for a long time. I was just kind of like, oh, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. And so when I actually did kind of get focused on NASA was when I saw that first launch. So this was April 2010, so
Okay,
like
so right.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. um, and I had been in Florida for spring break with my family. We were going to like the touristy Disney, but we had also stopped by the Space Center.
Mhm.
And I remember because it was a very, very early launch, and I was woken up at about 5 a.m. And I was like, Mom, whatever this is cannot be worth it. And she's like, you'll see, you'll see. And then I remember I was standing in a golf course field, actually, and they had a bunch of other people that were just kind of milling about on the grass. And I was like, what is going on? And I hadn't realized that we were that close to the Kennedy Space Center. And there was a launch at 6 a.m. that day. So I remember I was just watching the skyline, just waiting for something to happen. And then there's this sudden flash of bright light, and you're like, is the sun coming up? Is the world ending? I don't know. And then you kind of see it like go across the sky, and I don't know, it's breathtaking, really. I can't even explain it.
Yeah, man, I'm there with you. So went to school for this stuff to learn about rocket science, and had never experienced it until that NASA social. And you're right, nothing describes it. Like you really do have to be there, and I didn't get that till I saw the Falcon 9, and that, I mean, comparatively, I'm sure the shuttle was much louder and even more of an experience, because Falcon 9 is not that big of a rocket. But wow, that's pretty cool. That's so you were always a sciencey kid. Was there a science class, or what was your favorite class growing up? Do you have one?
For a while, I had wanted to be a nurse, and that dream persisted until I got to biology, and I could not memorize for the life of me.
I'm totally there with you.
So my dreams were dashed then. But after that, I started to pick up physics, which a lot of people were telling me not to do because they were like, "Oh, it's so much math. It doesn't make sense. Don't do it." But then, like, I did it, and it was fun, and I got good at it. So I was like, "That's it. I'm committed."
Nice, nice, hardcore. I like it. I like it. Uh, do you have a favorite planet?
Okay. If we choose purely for aesthetic reasons, I would have to say Saturn. I mean, it's got the rings, it's huge, it's pretty baller.
Hmm.
But in an overall rubric score, I think Earth has to be my favorite.
Okay, that's understandable. Totally. What's your position on Pluto, with it being a dwarf planet now and reclassified?
So I got the opportunity to go to the International uh, Aeronautical Conference last year, and I got to see Jim Bridenstine, and he talked for 10 whole minutes about why Pluto is a planet.
Oh, okay. He has been pushing that pretty hard, I will say. Man, what was that conference like?
Oh, it was kind of funny actually because it was just like the conventions I'm used to and that I go for like nerdy things,
Hmm.
but it was like a science-based convention and I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah. Were there a lot of people with I mean, just was it a lot of like foam board like thesis and like projects, or was it other, like, I don't know. That's it's the first thing I think of as science conference, but
Yeah, it was a little bit more commercial than that, actually. So they had the big boys there. They had NASA, they had ESA, they had a bajillion other agencies from other countries. And everybody had like demos of the things they were trying to build.
hmm.
And some people had like rocket parts, which was really interesting. And they had a lot of freebies to give away.
Nice. Got it. Oh, some good science swag. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Mhm.
So going back to the internship, so you said you've done two now, and you've just got accepted for your third. Again, congratulations. Um,
Thank you.
what what got you to decide to apply for the first one?
So ever since I saw that first launch 10 years ago, I had been like kind of hooked on the idea. So we had been coming back for spring break into Florida because where else does a typical suburban family go? And it was one of the other times we had gone to the Kennedy Space Center, probably about the third time I'd been there. And we were on the tour, and I remember we were on the bus. So the bus part of the tour goes right past the VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building. And I remember my mom turning to me and going, they probably take interns that apply. And I was like, Mom, this is NASA. They don't want us. But I was like, all right, if Mom said so, I should at least give it a shot.
Mm. So it was just that little extra push, just to kind of make you think that it's even possible, just to kind of plant the
Hmm.
seed, and that's all it took.
Yep.
Well, how old were you when you got accepted for your first internship?
So I got the email that I was accepted. It was, I think, 4th of July weekend, 2019.
Cool. Oh, cool. So you've just been kind of going back to back with this. That's so much fun. Okay,
Hmm.
so take me through, and I know you probably can't share everything, but I am really interested to know like what you've been working on. Like, did it change from internship to internship? Do you like, is it like a rotation program where you work on different things? Just tell me about it.
Hmm. Yeah, so basically they have a website called NASA Force where you can apply to internships. And they have a bunch of projects listed by like a general description of what you'd be doing and the skills that they're hoping an intern would have in applying.
Hmm.
So actually, the first time I applied was over the summer of 2019, and I didn't get accepted.
Okay.
But for the fall, I had been accepted to the basically it's the brain of Kennedy Space Center, where they manage a lot of incoming information from other parts of the center. So we have a part that studies life science. We have a part that studies cryogenics. We have a part that studies propulsion. And all those pieces kind of develop information within each other, and then they get sent to one big place that assembles it. So that was my job. And it was a lot of Excel. It was like Excel all day.
Excel, you don't realize how magical Excel is. Like, you literally do
Hmm.
everything from, I mean, almost anything. I mean, I remember designed a friggin' a mission to Mars in Excel, and when I that time I did that, I was like, okay, we can do anything. Let's do this. That's cool. Okay. And so did you work in the brain both times and kind of build on the work
I
from before?
was I was in the brain for the first one, and then for the second one, I was in the brain again. But they actually kind of low key ran out of work for me to do.
Hmm.
So I was doing a lot of job shadows to the other directorates, which are all the other entities that work at Kennedy. And I had found a really nice project designing circuits with the applied physics lab. So that
Oh,
was super duper fun.
oh man, that's so much fun. That sounds, you mentioned something, and I had talked to another friend that works at NASA, and that's something that's different than I think, at least my experience. And I think if someone works not in the government sector, like NASA is um, you kind of end up like if you work for, throw an example, you work for like a machine shop. You might do some milling, you work within the office, maybe you do some computer work, but that's kind of it. And it's with your experience, and I think at NASA in general as a government employee, you kind of just get sent around, it seems, to wherever you're
Mhm.
needed. And if you do run out of work, they're like, okay, guess what? You're doing this now. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, definitely. So you have to be adaptable, I think, is one of the number one qualifications they like in people that work at NASA. Because if you get a new project, you don't necessarily know what resources you have to use for said project, which means you might have to teach yourself.
Right. Okay, so that's a perfect segue into what kind of advice you might have for someone that is, at this moment going like, "Hey, yeah, I would like to internship for NASA right now. What can I do? What are the things I need to work on or prepare for if I want to do that?"
Okay, so I'll make this a four-pronged battle plan.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, so the first thing is you have to like kind of mentally hype yourself up because when you first like think about it, you're like, oh my God, these people put men on the moon. Why do they want me? Ditch that out of your head right now. Because like I went into it thinking, oh man, I don't have any experience. I don't know if they even want me. I don't know if I have the skills that they want. And I had already been rejected from at least a dozen other internship or research applications. So I was like, all right. um, but if you think you're not worth it, like that's totally not true. And even if you think, okay, they only hire rocket scientists, that's again totally not true. They have like communications departments, they have a legal office. So if you are good at something, NASA will probably need you. So that's the first thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I
the
love
second thing, thanks. Um, the second thing is they have a portion in the application where you can write an essay about why you want to work for NASA. So I've had some other fellow interns just kind of write, well, NASA is cool. I like rockets. Please hire me. Thanks.
that.
But your essay is really a good place to like shine. The first line of my essay, which was really super, super geeky, was if aliens landed on Earth and wanted to see the culmination of all humanity has been and could be, I'd show them NASA. And my mentor always reminds me that that line was so quirky, but that was one of the big reasons that he chose me for the project.
Hmm.
So make sure, step two, make your essay like 100% like your personality and really show your enthusiasm.
Hmm.
Um, for 3 and 4, which are both a little bit more technical, so for 3, make sure that you build up a lot of skills. So NASA naturally likes a lot of people that have hard skills like programming, skills with Excel, and those kind of hard skills, but they also like soft skills. So if you're part of a sports team and you've had a captain role or you've just been in teamwork, just emphasize all your skills. Like you are your brand, sell yourself. um, and my fourth thing to mention with that is that the database for the internships, they get a bajillion applicants. So for the projects I had been applying to, I could have been 1 out of 200 people that was applying to that project,
Hmm.
which those odds are very terrifying.
Yep.
But so the system makes it easier for the mentors by sorting things by keywords. So if you want to make sure you use things like teamwork, leadership, experience, and any other general kind of coding keywords, if you're looking for a more technical job, make sure you include it in your application because the mentors will filter out by those particular things. So if you don't mention that you know Excel in your resume, they're not going to know.
Right. That's a
That's my
pro,
four-pronged
honestly,
approach.
that's a pro tip, man. And just in
Hmm.
interviewing in general, like there is so much, and they must have, like you said, too many people to look at, and it's daunting on both sides, right? The people hiring and the people trying to get in. Um,
Hmm.
but you're right. You need to know what, I think a lot of people, I know I've been in the job hunting process, and it gets ugly sometimes. You don't hear anything at all. And you're right. Focusing on the system that's at hand and making sure that you work the system. That's such a huge thing that so many people don't think about. So I'm glad that you said that.
Hmm.
That four-prong approach, that's great. I love that. I thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about the future of space. You're kind of at the front lines here of everything that's going on, doing your part. What are you most excited for with the future of space? And that anything in the current news, or anything that you could see in the future that you're excited for in space.
So one of the big things that's been kind of buzzing around NASA, and before we transitioned to teleworking, a lot of people like in the lunchrooms and everything would be really excited to hear about, is the SpaceX and Boeing crewed flight tests coming up. So we haven't launched anybody from Cape Canaveral in a long time. So everyone at the Space Coast is really excited to see people back in rockets again, launching from Florida.
Yeah, I mean it's super exciting. The 2011 since the shuttle was retired, so we're
Mhm.
almost at 10 years, and yeah, sending humans is such a whole new it's a whole new thing, and I think so much of what the nation and the world knows of NASA is human spaceflight. Going to the moon,
Mhm.
obviously, but also the shuttle. And I think when the shuttle got retired, it just did such uh, a pain to the brand of NASA that so many people. I mean, I don't know about you, but I still have people coming up asking, like, does NASA still exist? Maybe less now, but in the last 5 years, people would ask, like, do they even still do stuff? It's like, yeah, man, they do a lot of things. They're just not sending people.
Yeah, actually, I had a very funny experience while I was traveling to the Congress in October of last year. I had gotten an Uber driver that was driving me from the convention center to the place I was staying, and she was like, "So what are you here for?" And I was like, "Well, there's a conference, and I'm here like for NASA to post on social media." And she was like, "NASA's still around?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Oh man. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know what it is, but when we start launching humans again, man, it's
Hmm.
gonna get excited, and the Cape is gonna get flooded with people on those beaches again, which is gonna be really really cool. So I agree. I'm really excited about that with space coming up here. Let's shift to your other passion, cosplay. What got you into it?
Yeah. So one interesting thing is I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of techie people that are also kind of creatives. Just for a background, we had about 40 interns at Kennedy this past spring, and myself and two others were cosplayers. So we're more prolific than you think. But yeah, I've always been a nerd. My first game was Star Wars Battlefront 2 for the original Xbox. That game came out in 2005, so I've been dedicated.
You've been in it.
Yeah. So I remember while I was younger, I was like Googling pictures from my favorite video games so I could print them out and hang them on my wall. And I saw pictures of people that were cosplaying, and I was like, people play dress up when they're older than 10? So I wanted to give it a try, and I did, and now I'm here.
Yeah. So what have been some of your favorites that you've done?
Oh gosh.
I'm sure
So my my first cosplay was in 2012. So I've been at this for 8 years. Um, my first cosplay was Maka from Soul Eater, which is a really phenomenal anime. Um, and now I think my top two favorites are my newest cosplay, which is Thor from Marvel.
looked really.
Thank you. And Pyrrha from the show Ruby.
Mm. And do you make all your outfits yourself?
Yep, I do.
Cool. So that's a cool combination of like a bunch of different skills that you've picked up probably over the years, right?
Hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, so I ended up having to teach myself sewing. My mom helped me out at first, but I got like really impatient. So I was like, okay, my mom works 9 to 5, but if I want to work myself on cosplay 9 to 5, then I got to teach myself to sew. So I did that. And then there's just a ton of resources online for everything else, including sewing. But for like the armor making aspect, for making props, and all that. So yeah.
All right. What other have you done just sewing? What other types of things have you gone into? You worked with like foam and plastic and wood or
Yeah, I tend not to use wood because it's really heavy and I have weak noodle arms. So I don't want to carry that around all day.
That's
But
fair.
a lot of cosplayers use something that's called a thermoplastic,
Hmm.
which is a plastic where you apply heat to it and it kind of softens up into like a cookie dough kind of texture.
Hmm.
Um, so I use that and I create a lot of my armor. And so when it cools off again, it cools into that hard plastic so you can kind of hit it and it's fine. Um, so yeah, I use foam and thermoplastic in armor making. I've picked up 3D printing recently because I
Nice.
got a 3D printer,
Awesome.
and I've obviously still been sewing after all this time.
That's awesome. No, that's the hands-on things. I mean, I don't know, for me has been where I learned the most. Like just being hands-on and like I don't know, if I can get my hands on something, I don't even necessarily need my sight. Like obviously it's great to have it, but like I learned so much from that tactile feedback. I'm sure you probably think of the same, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
So you mentioned 3D printing. What do you have as a 3D printer?
I have a monoprice voxel. So it's basically a cube microwave shaped kind of 3D printer, not open air, which is nice because I'll be moving between my internship, my house, my college dorm. So I needed something a little bit more movable.
Yeah. A little robust. Yeah, I hear you.
Mhm,
No, that's very cool. Are you using like PLA and PTG, or
mhm.
have you gone the ASA route yet?
I'm still using just PLA. It's the best for cosplay I've found because it has the kind of the balance of the lightweightness and the hardness and the sturdiness. But I would be interested after I get pretty good at it to branch out into other materials.
Yeah, ASA is one that I'm going to be using soon. I guess it's because it's super light. It's a lot less
Mm.
dense, so you can get a lot of strength, but still keep light, so you don't have to worry about carrying so much weight. So that's pretty cool. I'll let you know how it goes. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, pretty cool. Thank you. Man, it's so nice to hear. One of the things I think a lot of people, you mentioned it already, but people when they think scientist, I think a lot of people think white coat, lab, a beaker. You know, it's like, and it's really not that. I mean, there's so much more to it, and I think there's way more creative people than I think a lot of people even can imagine. Um, so, man, yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So, when does your next internship start? Do you know yet?
So knock on wood, it should be starting June 1st. So
Awesome.
hopefully everything.
I know. Yeah, we're recording this a little early. I'm not sure when this will come out. Probably in a few weeks. But you were still in the midst of coronavirus and the lockdown. So did you do any kind of remote work with your second one, or
Yeah,
you did?
so I'm actually finishing up the second one now. So I've been teleworking, which has been an interesting experience doing rocket science-y stuff while still in my pajamas.
That's the dream, honestly. Honestly.
Yeah, kind of.
Well, that's cool, man. Well, I wish you luck, man. All the best with your third internship, and let me ask, where would you like to go with your career? What do you see as your future with NASA or with space and science? Where would you like to go?
Oh, well, I mean, after 3 semesters, knock on wood, 3 semesters at NASA, I think I'm pretty sold on staying there. So, actually, they have a special internship program called the Pathways Program, where if you do a really good job, they give you the chance to be converted to a full-time job at the end. So I'll be applying there in the coming months.
Awesome. Do you see yourself being an astronaut someday?
uh, I think I'd like to get a little bit more electrical engineering work done because that's the area I'd like to specialize in. But after a couple of years in the lab, I think I'd be cool to go to space.
Well, most a lot of them have done that. So I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Georgia, thank you for being on the podcast. I wish you all the luck with your internship and with the Pathways program. Get yourself in NASA, do some great work, and just be safe. Be safe. Be good. And thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do you have any last words for anyone that like to follow your path, or just anyone that is on the edge of getting into science? What's your last thoughts for them?
Please just try it, and if you hate it, you don't have to do it anymore. But if you think like, oh, maybe this is for me, just maybe, give it a shot. You won't regret it. At worst case scenario, you crossed one thing off your list.
Perfect. Georgia, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
I want you to share where online, at least for your cosplay stuff, to get some stuff. So where can the folks find you?
So that would be, you could find me on Instagram at WesRes, on Twitter at WesRes Cosplay, and on YouTube at WesRes Cosplay.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode of Today in Space.